let folks know that there were no votes taken in our executive session tonight. I want to call the Hopkinton Town Council meeting of May 20th, 2019 to order with a moment of silent meditation and salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up, folks, is the open a hearing on the proposed ordinance, Chapter 5.5, entitled Adoption of the State Property Maintenance Code for the Town of Hopkinton, introduced and sponsored by me. The State Property Maintenance Code is a section of the State Building Code, Chapter 5.5, entitled Adoption of the State Property Maintenance Code for the Town of Hopkinton. Provides language enumerating the State Property Maintenance Code, serves as the property maintenance code for the Town of Hopkinton. This ordinance also adopts municipal jurisdiction language for grass and weed length, along with a fine for each violation. Key elements of the proposed ordinance: State Property Maintenance Code to be adopted as property maintenance code for the Town of Hopkinton. The town will adopt a maximum of 10 inches as the maximum allowable height of grass and weeds. The town may assess a fine of $25 per day per violation. I'm on this as sponsor only because I'm the guinea pig and I get to, if any new changes to an ordinance, they need a name sponsor, and that was me. So Bill McGeary worked hard on this. We don't technically, I believe, have a property maintenance code or ordinance on the books. This sort of, it's like enabling legislation, so you can adopt state enabling legislation, and this does that. Most of the complaints that I received stem around property maintenance issues, particularly. So we'll talk about it, and then we'll open it up to the public. And do you have anything to say? I guess, Bill, I know Sherry's here from Building and Zoning.
Yes, just very briefly. This was initiated from Sherry Dijon, the deputy zoning official over there in the Building and Zoning office. She gets numerous complaints on an annual basis about property maintenance issues in town, and I'll defer to Sherry to explain about the proposed ordinance.
Basically, in a nutshell, to sum it up for you guys, our Chapter 5.5 Code of Ordinances adopts the State Building Code as our building code. This property maintenance code is part of the State Building Code. And what they did was they left it to the individual jurisdictions to establish the numbers on the height of grass and fire.
In 1993, the town did adopt the Rhode Island Housing Maintenance and Occupancy Code, and that's all we've been working on since then.
Until this came out,
right,
which was in 2010.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I'd like to just comment. One of the things that concerns me is because some people like myself, I mean, a lot of times you mow around the house, but my concern is what do you do with people who have like 2 or 3 acres, they have a house, and are they going to be accountable for all the 2 or 3 acres they have?
No, absolutely not.
How's that going to work?
This is basically to around the house itself, lawn.
Is there any dimensions to that at all as far as around the principal residence?
No, there's not really any dimensions to it. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not going out looking to be the lawn police here. Basically just setting, like I said, the state left it to the individual municipalities to set their height. So it doesn't have to be 10 inches, it could be 12 inches, it could be 14 inches.
Yeah, my concern is, like I stated, I'm concerned about people that have more than, let's take a housing development, and then some people live on reasonably good-sized plots of land, and how much of that lawn has to be mowed, and just around the house, I mean, is it 50 feet, 20 feet, 25 feet? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Understood, Scott, but there are no dimensions to it, and I mean, understandably, yes, we're in a rural community, so there are people that have fields, that have grassy fields. I wouldn't expect that we're going to hold them to keep it down to 10 inches, absolutely not. It's more of a, like you said, property maintenance thing. With that comes sanitary issues. You don't want around the dwelling, the grass at 3 feet. The harbor, rats, mice will breed in there, you'll have snakes. So it's just basically more geared towards around the house.
And there are exemptions.
Absolutely.
So folks will know it's open space and recreational properties are exempt. Agricultural operations under the Rhode Island Right to Farm Act, so agricultural operations are exempt. Specific portions of private properties in all zoning districts are exempt. For portions of property in question that consist of drainage swales, rain gardens, similar low impact design techniques where are located. My attitude when I first saw something out of your office about grass some years ago, I was actually, my first reaction was you gotta be kidding. And I still say you gotta be kidding. So, you know, I just don't know how many are getting lots of complaints, I guess.
This time of year, this is when the complaints will start coming in, and that's why I'm saying I'm bringing to those attention. Because there's no way I can enforce without having stipulated a height. I don't have any enforcement. So when I have neighbors calling about properties, and I understand people go on vacation, things happen. This is geared more toward the derelict properties that I receive complaints on.
I brought in show and tell. This is my backyard, and I mowed it. I mowed it low, but I understand that you need a number. I do think that's probably something we can do because the general requirements leave it up to the towns to make a decision. I think 10 inches is too low, but this grass stalk is 18 inches. And 18 inches allows the grass to have seeds and, you know, propagate. So I think 18 inches is a valid number. Most of this is in the 12 inches, you know, so you can really see what the height is. 10 is really down here, which I think is probably okay in the city, but I think it would be inappropriate in the country. But I think even if you give her an 18, that's enough for a grass to do what it's supposed to do without the weeds, which get even taller, which would be something you'd be able to take down. And I think the $25 a day fine is adequate. But I don't mind the number that she needs. I think she does need something. I just think 10 is too low.
Sure. Any thoughts?
She doesn't think that's 18 inches. It is. It is. I measured it.
I think 18 is too high. Somewhere in between.
15?
You get 18, you want to bail. You know, so some areas obviously, you know probably where they hay. You know, so it goes to seed, it's time to hay.
So it should be lower.
So 15?
So 15 is fine with me, unless everybody wants to
Is it a
18.
good compromise?
I'm okay.
Yeah, curious to see
I
what
think
everybody
everybody
else
number.
thinks.
I just wanted to make sure people understand what heights were.
15, okay?
I'm going to listen to a
So
public
is this not
comment and decision after I heard the public comment.
Anyone wishing to weigh in on Dr. Gardner, on the grass ordinance or the property maintenance code?
Specific of this topic.
Hi, Dorothy Gardner. I'm just curious, are we simply adding a minimum of X number of inches of grass, or what, are we adopting an entire maintenance code?
It's enabling legislation, so it's adoption. It's a maintenance code adoption.
Pardon,
It's a maintenance code adoption.
the whole thing?
Yeah.
So what else is included?
There's a lot of things.
So this is kind of mushy. You know, it just says grass.
This is the property maintenance code that we go by.
So is that already part of what we,
This was part of the state building code, and the state building code is what we operate under.
oh, okay. That's what I was
But
curious.
they did have a.
So we're just adding this.
It's just, yeah, it's an amendment to that.
Okay,
To the
thank you.
site, okay. Yes, Marty, 1 second. Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
My name is Martin Lees, and I just wanted to say that I do believe in this, and I believe it's helpful in the aspect of, in an average neighborhood, people that cut their grass, the grass is cut at 3 inches, not 15 or 18 or 10. And when you let a lawn go unkept, it impacts the value of other people's property. Nobody's asking people to manicure their lawns or anything like that. They're just looking for something reasonable to maintain a respectable looking neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, Justin.
Just a couple, Justin Medley, 138 Maximum Road. Just a couple of things. I'm just questioning, I guess, no offense against Sherry, and I know several of the points have been made, but I question, I guess, the necessity of this, especially at this time. We've obviously, solar is removed from this, and I'm not going to mention specific properties, but one of the major complaints against that has been the fact that it's an eyesore. And I'm sure that's the #1 reason why neighbors are going to complain that the lawn is an eyesore. So for us to put this in place and then turn around and say your lawn is hideous, it's an abomination, it seems very hypocritical. The other aspect, again linked to solar, once again, is that one of the big pushes for solar projects is we need money, as I understand we do. But to defend and look out for the poor and the tired, and people that are on a budget, and then you're going to turn around and find them $25 a day when they can't afford gas, a working lawnmower, or pay someone to mow their lawns, seems really absurd. So I just would ask that you take those two things into account.
Yes, Bill.
This has nothing to do with solar.
No, I know that.
Sherry and I had talked about having an internal policy that we're going to draft, and basically it gives the people 7 days to cut their lawn, also with extenuating circumstances, if they're on vacation out of state, they're going to have an inspection first, and then in 7 days, if they're still out of state or unavailable, we're going to give them another 7 days until they come back. And the 7-day notice with respect to the municipal court violation only begins once they receive the actual written notice of violation. So informally, we're going to give them plenty of time in order to comply with the proposed ordinance, as opposed to being the law.
Yes, Paul, please.
I think there should be not a fine right away, a couple of warnings before you start handing out fines.
Okay. Yes.
Lawn Turner. Just a couple of points, and this may not have to do with solar. However, we want to keep consistency in how we look at things. You can't address one thing one way and address another. So with that being said, what happened to you can do whatever you want to do with your land? I've heard that many times. You can do whatever you want with your land. So how does the grass cutting not fall under that same category? You can do whatever you want with your land. So how much is this going to cost to police this and write this document where this doesn't seem to be, there's no health hazard, there's,
She's never had that.
I mean, it just seems like a silly amount of time and resources on the amount of land. I mean, are you going to go around and measure tape and measure this? I mean, I just don't understand it. And you talk about the value of your house going down because somebody's grass is too tall. How much is the value of your house going to go down when you're next to a solar? So if you're worried about that, you have to be consistent across the board. Worry about all of the things that can impact the value of solar, not just grass.
Do you have an opinion on the grass height?
No,
You want it mowed?
no,
Oh, you don't have an opinion on that at all? Okay.
no, I just feel like if, you know, if somebody can do what they want with their land, if they can do what they want.
Everybody can do whatever they want with their land according to the town regulations and zoning. I mean, you know, you can't just like, have a CVS backyard. You know?
Well, I mean, I think, you know,
Like a car in your
if,
backyard.
if, you know, I mean, I don't want to see a piece of property next to me rezoned either.
Okay.
I mean, it has to be consistent.
Let's try and stay on point with the property maintenance. Anybody else? Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
sorry, Frank, that was not good, because I'm saying there's inconsistency.
Well, that's
Okay.
okay.
Hi, Tammy Walsh, 229 Woodville Road. I guess I'm just trying to understand, so are you getting complaints from neighbors that live next door to vacant properties? So to me, we should be dealing with that issue and not creating something that is for everybody who lives in town. Right, I mean, I have a friend who lives next door to a house that's been vacant now for, I don't know, 5 years or something like that, and I know she has called, you probably know who it is, she's called about it because the grass was, you know, this high. I get that. But on the other hand, and I also get if you live in a subdivision and you have neighbors, you want people to take care of their property, but that doesn't seem to be the real problem. If the problem is vacant properties and people just aren't taking care of them, then I think we should be dealing with that specific issue and not creating something that applies to everybody.
Yeah, good point. We do have a vacant and abandoned property ordinance that we adopted, so that's already in place.
And this could also apply to that because, again, there's no, even though we have the vacant and abandoned property ordinance, there's nothing for you to enforce it with. So I can get in touch with these mortgage companies or property managers and say, listen, I've been getting complaints, the grass is now 4 feet high. There's no teeth. Without a number, I can't enforce any of this. And it is a combination of complaints also from
I think that's,
properties that are.
we had a vacant property across the street from me, and it wasn't so much the high grass that people were worried about, it was the rats that were living in a vacant property. But they had rats, so there are health concerns.
Absolutely.
And we got quite a little infestation for a while until we got the grass down. The town had to get the grass down, and we had to get rid of the rats. So yes, it is unpleasant.
Yes, sir.
Brian Dwight, Woodville Road. I don't, nobody's said it, I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to speak for the senior citizens in this community. There are a lot of senior citizens in this community. It's difficult. People are sick, people have family problems, may not even own a lawnmower. There are people like me, I really don't have any lawn. I have 2 acres of woods. I live on Woodville Road, Woodville-Alton Road, and it's all woods. But I wouldn't want to speak for the senior citizens. I think this is going to be an undue burden on senior citizens. Listen, I moved back 20 years ago from New Jersey. And our police department in New Jersey would come to your house and the police would stand over people and make them mow their lawn. I don't want to see that happen here in Hopkinton. If we were Providence or Cranston or Warwick, I can see it. But not in Hopkinton. I also think it's an undue burden on our police department besides that. But I think we just need to be careful. I think we're going down a road that could end up in somewhere we don't want to be. And again, I want to say, think about our senior citizens.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right, any other comment? Oh, Scott, you were to weigh in, I guess.
No, I mean, I'll wait until we have a council discussion. I'm concerned, I mean, in my own lawn, right around the house, it was recently mowed, but in the back, not mowed. I'm just concerned about people having different sized lot, and a lot of people will mow part of their lot, and then other land they don't mow. And what also is, when I brought it up, when I discussed it, is you can enforce a law, you need frontage, feet, and everything else. Otherwise, the law theoretically could be applied indiscriminately. I'm not saying it would be, but when you have things in writing, and you have feet and dimensions, it makes you enforce the rules better. I mean, that's why we have ordinances in town. And you can still work on people who are on vacation and things like that. But the thing is, I'm really concerned about voting on something to enforce a rule about there should be some dimensions of feet from a residence, especially if people have 2 or 3 acres, which some people in this town do, or they have more. And that does concern me. So I'm going to wait until we have a final discussion on making decisions and see what I hear. Thank you.
I was going to say, we could do one other thing. The town may assess a fine of $25 per day for violation. We could change that to $25 per week for violation.
Or we could just get rid of it.
Or just get rid of it.
Yeah, I don't think we want to get the money. I don't think that's the issue. It's more just to get folks to kind of do things somewhat. So I'm fine with that too. You know? Moving the burden. So that'll hopefully help with your senior citizen concern or anyone else. All right, I guess anything else from the public on the grass property maintenance? Yes, ma'am.
Yvette Agnes Boy, Spring Street. I just wanted to, if you want to
Yeah,
go
please,
there.
if you don't mind.
Just wanted to clarify, shouldn't we know, if this were to become an ordinance, shouldn't we have real dimensions? Shouldn't we have the kind of location that the house is in? For instance, if you're not on a public road or near anything, and no one sees your lawn, and you're not really connected. In other words, I think there has to be a real definition of what the ordinance should be, so that it's clear and that, you know, there's no arbitrary decisions made.
Good point. Thanks.
I would make a motion to continue the hearing and have Sherry see if we can put some of that in writing and take a look at it a little more clearly.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
No.
No.
I was just going to say, I don't see a need to have another hearing.
Well, there's some, I think there's some specifics
Like
that.
one here that answers that Sherry comes up with.
Yeah, I think it's prudent to okay, the motion made and seconded. No further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. Next up, consent agenda. Approved town council meeting minutes of May 6, 2019. Financial town assembly minutes of May 7, 2019. Special town council meeting minutes of May 13, 2019. Set June 3rd, 2019 as the hearing date for a special event permit filed by the Ashway Cat 1 Cub Scouts for the annual family campout. Accept the following monthly financial activity report. Town clerk. Approve refunds as a result of an escrow company's overpayment of 2018 real estate tax and overpayment of 2016 motor vehicle tax submitted by the tax collector. Approve proposed settlement of a pending lawsuit and the related pending collective bargaining, grievances, arbitration proceedings having been brought against the town and the town officials by a former employee. A, authorize the town manager to execute on behalf of the town the 2 proposed employment contracts with collective bargaining units representing the professional technical employees and the clerical employees, and authorize the town manager to execute on behalf of the town for the proposed individual employment contracts for both the information technology, geographical information systems official, and the finance director.
Okay, I'd like to pull May 6, 2019, please.
Okay.
Motion to approve the consent agenda without May 6.
A second.
Okay, motion made and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes, Scott, which page?
Okay, page 3, I think, I'm being picky, but in a couple of them I'm not. Signers, S-I-G-N-O-R, it says,
Where is this?
Where is it? Top of page 3?
middle of page 3, there's a one of the original signs that we intend to sign is usually E, and then actually silent, nor if I got, I don't know if that's the way you said it, but that's silent, nor if I got. And the, also,
Silent. Nor to be silenced.
now page 4, it says James Berry, I think that is like Berry. And the other thing is, I don't know if it's in this section, so maybe I did it wrong, but my neighbor Elaine Calder, and I believe her name is correctly spelled, and I could be wrong, C-A-L-D-A-R-O-N-E, unless I'm wrong.
Which page is that?
I don't know, it could have been another minute that we just approved, so I couldn't.
On page
Choose it.
19. C-A-L-D-A.
Yes, she's my neighbor for decades. But anyways, with those corrections, I move the adoption of these minutes.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. First public forum. Yes, sir. Eric. All right, that's fine. Just be concise. We got a full agenda. Respectful and civil, right? Thank you.
Always. Joe and I are here tonight because, as I think the council knows, we are two of several founding members of an organization called Hopkinton Citizens for Responsible Planning. We started the organization, I think, in August, and we put out some petitions that declared that our mission was to support the planning board. We believe that the activities of the planning board are extremely important. We want, as you know, we've had some significant conflict of opinion between the planning board and the town council, and our group has even filed some legal briefs suggesting that the town council has usurped some of the function of the planning board. But aside from that, you know, we wanted to support the planning board in its efforts to defend the integrity of the comprehensive plan, the planning process, and the authority of the planning board to perform its mission. We're here tonight because we want to just inform the town council that we have decided to make our, first time ever award on behalf of our organization to Tom Holberg, retiring member of the planning board. Tom, over a 33-year period, served for, depending on how you count, either 22 or 25 years on the planning board. He also, at the request of the town manager of the town, on 4 different occasions, he served as the interim town planner when the town didn't have a town planner, so that the town could continue to function in that important role. So we're here tonight to recognize Tom. If there's anyone else who has signed our petitions, wants to stand up and help us recognize Tom on behalf of Hopkinton Citizens for Responsible Planning. Joe may want to say a few words to add, but I just want to show to the town council, we have made up a plaque for Tom to express our appreciation. It's the first ever Tom Golden Eagle Award. Come on up. Presented. Let me just read it. It's brief. You're going to like that. It's presented to Thomas Holberg in grateful appreciation for your 22 years of outstanding service to the Hopkinton community. Hopkinton Citizens for Responsible Planning in 2019. Can I show it to, I'll give it to you, but I just want to show it to you. So, Joe, do you want to?
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, we have a couple of other things for Tom.
The one last thing.
It's all right.
Don't need it.
There you go.
Thank you, Joe and Eric. Tom. All right. Anyone else in the public forum? Yes, sir.
Hi folks, Tom Holbert, 2K Trail. I would rather be anywhere but here tonight. So, I got a couple of problems I need you to help me with. and I understand that your policy is not to respond back at public forum. And I'm concerned that if you don't have a dialogue with me, these problems that I have aren't going to get solved. I asked to be on the agenda. I guess I understand why you couldn't put me on the agenda, but I'm not happy about that. So the bottom line is, my appointment to the planning board came before you a couple of weeks ago. And while Lisa told me it was going to be on some agenda, I didn't know about it, and I didn't care to come anyway. I think this is the first council member meeting I've been to in 20, 30 years. So you all chose not to reappoint me, which quite frankly, I'm a little relieved. I haven't enjoyed the planning board the past year, and I've stayed on it kind of out of, you know, maybe some dedication or some, I felt I could help, but I haven't enjoyed it. And the only reason I asked to be reappointed was I felt I needed to see this solar thing through. I lived through, actually I was around when the federal prison came up, and I lived through that. When the dog track came up, and I lived through that, and I was in the forefront of the big box stores and Six Flags coming, and I lived through that. And quite frankly, I'm going to live through this, but I really want to just move on and live happily ever after. I just retired last fall, and I want to make this crystal clear. Every one of us that volunteers for the town knows we sit at the pleasure of the council. And I completely and totally support that. And I completely and totally support you not reappointing me. Because we made no bones about it. The council and myself, I won't speak for the other planning board members, we're not on the same page and haven't been for quite a while now. So I don't blame you. And I really, really want that crystal clear that I support that decision. What I'm here is, I haven't, Lisa called me the next day and said you guys didn't reappoint me. Great. So then I started getting the phone calls and the emails and people coming to my house. And I regress a little bit here. I live an absolutely idyllic life. I've worked my butt off my whole life. I care about my family and my property, and I live up in the woods. And I don't want this, I just wanted to walk away happily. Wanted to walk off into the sunset. And that would have happened if you people had just not reappointed me and went on to your next agenda item. But you couldn't do that. You all had to stand up on your soapbox and you had to trash me. I mean, it's inexcusable. It wasn't politics. It wasn't business as usual. It had nothing to do with anything. It was a personal, blatant attack. That's the only reason I'm here. I couldn't live with that. So now, you need to apologize, because it was inexcusable. The things you said and the way you said it. And I think maybe the worst thing is, I wasn't even here. How could you do that to somebody? How could you run them into the ground and say the things you did without them being here? I mean, to say you handled this poorly there's no way to describe that. You've got, I'm sure, well, I know this for a fact because of the emails and phone calls I've been getting, you know, you've got some damage control to do with the other boards and commission members. Because who's going to volunteer when you speak that way about somebody? And let me make this perfectly clear. I have no problem if you really feel that way. But you should have done it in executive session with me. You should have done it to my face. And I even question whether that's the real problem, because in any business, I'm technically your employee, you hired me. If anybody has a problem with the employee, why didn't somebody speak to me? I thought Barbara was still the council liaison. I apologize, Sharon, I didn't know you were the council liaison, because both of you always come to the meetings. And I'm as approachable as anybody. You couldn't have talked to me beforehand? I mean, it doesn't seem fathomable that if what I was doing was so egregious, you just let it continue until my appointment came up? You should have shut me down months ago, a year ago, whenever. So I have a real issue with that. And I'm a little concerned. I understand that you weren't at the meeting when this was going on. How could you have taken on something like that without the council liaison to the planning board being part of it? Now, my last and only problem is, those of you that don't know me, and for sure those of you that do, know that there's nobody in this room, nobody in this town, nobody in this state that's any more pro-growth, pro-development, pro-property owners' rights than me. And here I am, the forefront of anti-development. This is like, I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. So, I just want to walk away. I don't want to be here. I've done my time. I've volunteered all I'm going to volunteer. And you need to make amends, and you need to say that you didn't handle it well. So the other board and commission members can feel good about their positions, and you need to apologize to me personally. And if that doesn't happen, I don't know. We're just going to continue it. I really wish you could have a dialogue back with me right now. Is that legally not possible?
No, it's not, but I think when I decided not to put it on the agenda, Tom, I asked the clerk to have you call me. And so, you haven't called me since then, so feel free, we can certainly have that dialogue as you suggested. I have no issues with it whatsoever.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, so I can promise you that, at least from my perspective.
One of the things that really troubled me is my doing completely, but you and I never had a conversation. I would never have known you in the grocery store. So, So anyway, not really. I got about as thick a skin as you're going to find anybody in Hopkinton, but you guys ticked me off. You can't say those things about somebody when they're not in front of you. And for you to have done that in public, on TV, without me being here, it wasn't a good look for the council. And I'm trying to be civil right now, because you don't need this right now. I know you got the budget things going on, I appreciate that, the schools and all of that. I want you to do a good job, but you need to let me go away. And I don't want, with all due respect to everybody in the green program, I don't want to be the poster child for this. I just want to go away and live on my property, and take care of my family, and play with my new puppies.
Cut your grass.
I paid my, we have major tractors and stuff. So anyway, I guess that's it, unless you can talk back to me.
Can, but I'll talk to you offline.
Okay. I would appreciate that.
And I would like to say that I would have voted to continue if I was here.
Well, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Tom.
Good evening. This is not the place that I would like to be. My name is Janet Hilberton. I am the wife of Tom Hilberton, and we live at 2 Carriage Road. To say that I'm appalled, I'm more than that. I'm angry that the town council spoke about my husband without him here. In my world, that just does not happen. If you were displeased or dissatisfied with the planning board, the more appropriate course of action would have been to call a meeting with at least Al Diorio or all of the planning board members, but you chose not to do that. You should have at least had the decency to speak to Tom before the meeting, but again, that was not done. Your conduct was despicable. You spoke negatively about Tom without him being present to challenge your criticism or to defend his character. The board, in essence, gave him a review without the person knowing he had done anything wrong. In the world I work in, this doesn't happen. If I was to be doing something wrong within a year, I know what I was doing wrong so that I can correct it. It is not done in the forum that you did it. An executive session should have been the answer, not this. Sylvia, you said this was not about votes.
Planning board votes, right?
Then what was it? If it wasn't about that. You indicated votes, you didn't say planning board votes, you said votes. So again, I asked you, what was it? You indicated people complained. Who were they? Why did they complain? That was never brought up. Tom should have been able to answer to that, or the planning board should have been able to answer to that. Barbara, you called Tom an embarrassment and uncivil and rude. He's not an embarrassment to this town. He has given up many nights of being with family, to be going over the planning board agendas and to be being here until well after 10 o'clock at night. Tom has the best interests of Hopkinton, always has and always will. Frank, you said you personally witnessed Tom being rude and critical. You've never met Tom, so how could you personally?
At a planning board meeting.
One.
I've been to more than one.
When we interviewed.
Scott, I thank you for your kind words in support of Tom. They are truly appreciated. In closing, I respectfully ask you to apologize to Tom for your actions at the May 6th Town Council meeting. I should also hope that no other volunteer for the town of Hopkinton goes through this. I will be also asking Hopkinton residents to make sure at the next election that they really take a serious look at who we're putting in to the town council. And you can guarantee that I will not be voting for you. Thank you.
Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. I've attended all but one planning board meeting since July. I have found all planning board members to be honest, respectful, and very knowledgeable concerning their job at all meetings. At one meeting, an attorney presented a 2-page document for their particular project. I'm not an attorney, but I could have done a better job than the attorney did. Tom told the attorney exactly what he thought and was very honest. He never raised his voice or was disrespectful. He told the truth and it needed to be said. At another meeting, the chair of the planning board had to tell a paid witness from Sage Environmental, I believe the word that he used was, I have to criticize you for a minute, or chastise you, I'm sorry. His point was a 44-page email was received on a Tuesday for a Wednesday meeting. Again, very honest, he never raised his voice and was always respectful. He also told the truth and it needed to be said. The same applies to the other 3 members of the planning board. We are reminded several times by the town council that we need more volunteers for different boards and residents need to get involved. I want to fast forward to the town council meeting on May 6th. Discuss, consider, and vote to reappoint Tom Hopkinton to the planning board. One big problem I have with this meeting was Tom was not told that there was an issue. He was not even had the decency to let him be there to defend himself. He was raked over the coals by 3 of the 4 town council members. And we want volunteers for boards and commissions. Now it's going to be even more difficult to get those people to come forward, to volunteer their time. The last 12 years before I retired, I was a human resource manager at Eastside Marketplace in Providence with several hundred employees. I was also a district manager for CVS for 16 years, responsible for 12 to 15 stores at any given time. In both jobs, if there was an issue with an employee, they knew it. There was a common sense approach to these issues. The first step was a verbal warning. We sat down over a cup of coffee. We talked about it. If there wasn't any improvement, it went to a written warning. Again, if the issues continued, suspension, last step was termination. But they had an opportunity to defend themselves and, more importantly, to correct their actions. This was for paid employees. The employee was never surprised by the action taken by myself or the store managers of the stores. Tom was a victim here because Tom and most of the planning board members were firm in their decisions that these projects were inconsistent with the comprehensive plan and were a classic example of spot zoning. He was never rude, he was never disrespectful. He got his point across and he did it in a civil manner. In my opinion, the 3 town council members who voted not to reappoint Tom to the planning board should look in the mirror tomorrow and ask yourself one simple question. What would you do if this happened to you? You would not be as respectful as Tom is, and that's a shame. It's a shame. You won't see anyone applying for these boards or commissions, and I don't blame them. A volunteer with 22 years over a 33-year period, it is ridiculous. Is he just the first victim because of his stance on spot zoning? It's definitely is spot zoning, a lot of these projects. Who is the next planning board member to come up for reappointment? I don't know, but I would be concerned if I was that person. Thank you.
Just a quick question, I'm kind of in the dark here. Did all these alleged comments take place in executive session or at an open meeting?
Open session.
Pardon?
Open.
Open. Well, that's not really good.
So I just want to clarify one thing and really just, again, personally thank Tom. You know, we wanted to give an award for outstanding public service. I do somewhere in the vicinity of about 700 hours a year of public service, and I cannot, driving ambulances and training meetings and stuff, and I cannot imagine, you know, giving that kind of service to my community. You know, and by the way, I'm on the executive committee of our local EMS, and we terminate people because we have to sometimes. We have to terminate them because of their skills, because of conduct, because of behavioral issues, because of safety issues. That's a difficult thing to do. We don't do it. We would never do it like this. Okay? And the thing I really want to make abundantly clear, because Tom, I think you deserve this. The people in this room are not supporting you for a point of view. Okay? We wanted to give this reward for outstanding public service over a sustained period of time. We're giving this reward as a demonstration of our appreciation for your service and your integrity, and the fact that I think I've been to every meeting since July, and I haven't been to every meeting since July, but every one I have not been to, I've watched the full meeting on video. And we just want to thank you for your professionalism and for coming to every one of those meetings, you know, and trying to deal with these issues in good faith. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Tammy Walsh. So at the May 6th meeting, I did get up and speak about how incredulous I was about the way that the situation with Tom had been handled. I've worked in human resources. I retired in August, but I've worked in human resources for close to 35 years. I worked in union situations, non-union. I worked for a nonprofit organization that had volunteer boards and committee members. We would never have treated anybody like that. I just find it, I just can't even believe that you would do that in a public way. You want people to treat people with respect and courtesy and in a civil manner. That's what I think you used some of those words on May 6th. Your behavior that night was none of those. And I've also come to understand that, as Tom said and other people have said, there was never any discussion with him. At the very least, as somebody else said, shouldn't you have had a conversation with the chair of the planning board? Apparently that didn't happen. Somebody should have been made aware that you had a problem. And it shouldn't have been at a public meeting for everybody to hear. So there are a couple of things. I would suggest that you consider, when you are appointing people to boards and committees, that you provide them with something that tells them what your expectations are regarding behavior. It's important. You know, maybe you feel that's not necessary, we're all adults, right? But where I worked, we had all adult employees. And we had to put even the most basic things in black and white for some people. So I think that might not be a bad thing for you to consider. Secondly, if you are going to expect that your board or committee chairpersons are going to be the ones who should be speaking to other members on their committees and boards if their behavior is considered unacceptable, then you need to tell those chair people that. Because I don't think that they all know it. And lastly, I just want to reiterate, you're always asking people to volunteer for boards and committees. There is no way in the world that I would ever consider volunteering for anything in this town, given the way he was treated.
Okay, anyone else for public forum? Okay, thank you very much for all your comments, folks. Next up under my report, on May 17th, I had a meeting with Mr. Vincent Morano regarding some property his group had purchased on Palm Circle. I think it was about 250 acres. I was there, Bill, Jim, Sherry, I believe. Very ambitious plan. Boy, really ambitious. So anyway, next step is he's got to talk to the folks at the condo complex and see what their take is on what his plans are. It encompassed a hotel, self-storage, some medical facilities, things of that nature. So very, very ambitious, very expensive project. So more to come. I guess, like I said, he's going to meet with the condominium association first. Then I suggested a workshop ultimately to have everyone weigh in on the project because it's really, really pretty massive. So that was it. So anyway, thank you. Town manager report, Bill.
Thank you.
They're not going to bond.
The one subject is the Stubbtown Road landfill. On May 8th, I attended a meeting with Jim Lanfair, Stubbtown Road landfill butter, John Crooker and his attorney, which was held at the Crandall House, and there was a considerable amount of discussion regarding the future mediation of the landfill on Stubbtown Road. Secondly, along the same lines, on May 13th, I met with Council President Frank Landolfi, Solicitor Kevin McAllister, and Planner Jim Lanfair to discuss the current status of the Stubbtown Road landfill with respect to remediation efforts in conjunction with DEM regulations.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions about the folks?
So what are the next steps?
Well, that's a good question. I think currently Jim Lanfair is spending a lot of time dealing with Rhode Island DEM as far as developing a work action plan and also fulfilling some of the recommendations from DEM on the old landfill in order to button that up because it's been abandoned basically for the last 30 years. So once we satisfy those DEM requirements, then we'll be able to move forward and get a final confirmation to close the old landfill. The new landfill has already been approved as far as being closed. And once we do that, then we can evaluate, conduct a feasibility study as to whether or not it would be appropriate to put a solar farm on that town site. But it's still in its very, very infancy stages, and DEM, we've been working very closely with them. Their regulations are very comprehensive and complex, so it's going to take anywhere from 2 to 4 years.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, next up, under new business number 1, discuss, consider, and possibly vote to award a bid for Langworthy Field Phase 2 improvements to Yard Works Incorporated of Rhode Island in the amount of $608,500, funded through the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management Grant and CDBG funding.
I'll move that the Hopkinton Town Council award bid for Langworthy Field Phase 2 improvements to Yard Works Inc., Warwick, Rhode Island, in the amount of $608,500.
Seconded. Okay, motion made and seconded. Jim, I know that you had to ask them to lower their bid to this level, right? Was it just not enough money in the
Correct.
till? Okay.
Correct.
It was about 20,000 or something? I don't know how much.
Yeah, we negotiated with the low bidder to see if they could come down a little bit, which would enable us to do some of the alternate features that we wanted to do. So we did most of the important ones, and we think we're in pretty good shape.
What are the alternate features you're thinking?
The first one would be a stone veneer seat wall with a granite cap as you enter the park. The next one is we're going to revisit the backstop, the baseball backstop, and make a black mesh to go around there as the courts are done. And then most important at what we had to do is we have to revisit and pave the walking paths. Because through experience, we found that the stone dust path has experienced a great deal of erosion, and probably the best remedy for it would be to blacktop it and pitch it properly. So we think we've got it nailed this time. We experimented a little bit on the initial stages, but the nice feature about this is we're going to have Fuss and O'Neill come in here and inspect it much closer, actually directing the paving and the pitching of everything. So it should function with no problem.
What's the estimated timetable on the completion of all goes well?
Hopefully by Labor Day.
Okay.
We're gonna, the school is going to have a few functions the first week in June, so we kind of holding back from that. But I would say maybe June 10th, we could free and clear to start construction. So it's a kind of a project that you don't want to drag out any longer than you have to, because Locustville Road is going to be excavated, and drainage structures are going to be placed in it. New catch basins are going to be installed, parking, the road paved, repaved, nice and smooth. So it's going to be a big project in that area, and it has to get done. Once you start it, you have to follow through with it. So later day, I would say, we should be done with this.
So that you'll finish before school begins?
Hopefully.
Yes, Bill.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank Jim Lanfear and Jeff Marchand for all the work they did on this project. It's basically this is phase 2. Between phase 1 and phase 2, it's like a $1.2 million project, and the entire project, both phases, were funded through CDBG money and Rhode Island DEM grants, and no money from the town coffers.
What was the amount in CDBG, and was it different years, or was it just that 1 year? And I just wondered what the CDBG folks are paying for this $608,500.
CDBG funds are in the neighborhood, I don't know if Jeff has the exact figures, but they're in the neighborhood of $300,000. Both years, yeah.
It's 2 years?
Was it 3? Just 2? Go ahead, Jeff.
There was some very, very early design money in the deal. The construction was done basically in two rounds of funding. I don't know why they do what they do, but we got funding in what they call Program Year 15B, which brought in the first round of funding. And then we applied for the second round of funding in the 17 round, and they chose to put it in a managed 15B again to carry that. So it's 2 hits of construction funding in the vicinity of about $300,000. And that more than matches $791,000 DM. So it's really funding.
Yeah, that was a recreation grant, indeed.
Yeah, preparation was formal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gio and Jeff. Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Number two, Councilor Davis had requested the council to discuss some changes, I guess, to maybe some hearings and how they were coordinated. So I'll turn it over to Sharon.
Should I put in as a motion first?
No, let's just kind of, if you want to take each bullet point, you know, which one you want to discuss first, the time will take. Oh,
It's the way it reads, there's no voting on this agenda item, just so you know, Sharon.
Okay.
so,
Discussion.
yeah, we'll chat, yeah.
That's the way it reads, yeah.
And
Well, part of what I wanted this on, because a motion, I wanted it to be a motion, but anyway, we'll keep going. The many myriad solar development projects which have come before us and those which are scheduled to do so, and not to mention the many possible others which people are projecting, have brought a greatly increased workload to the town clerk's office, the planning department, the planning board, and the members of this council with the need to disseminate and conscientiously review documentation. In addition, this dissemination and review often has to take place under very limited time constraints because the materials and/or documents the developer needs to submit is not submitted far enough in advance to allow a more ordered and measured consideration. This, in my view, leads to four serious problems. First, giving each proposal due consideration becomes needlessly more difficult, especially if a councilor wishes to do any research of his or her own regarding the project or formulate penetrating questions regarding benefits or pitfalls. Second, since the developer sensibly wishes to make sure we learn as much as possible of the benefits and details of the project, the actual hearing must be lengthened to allow the developer to present verbally information which would normally be presented in written form. And third, because of the time used in both the developer's presentation and questions by the council, we often are forced to choose between cutting things short or stretching the hearing out to a second or even third hearing date. So far, more hearings has been our choice. This constant, extensive use of time leads to a fourth issue. These projects impact the residents of Hopkinton. So far, since I've been involved with the council, each project has generated interested citizens residents who wish to provide an opinion or points of interest to the council. Some even want to present legally based objections. But because of the uncertainty of time generated by how we are currently handling these solar project presentations, the council is forcing these citizens to come to a council meeting, sit through the developer's long verbal presentation, and then not be recognized to speak because of time constraints. I cannot tell you how many residents have complained to me that they have taken time off work, engaged babysitters, lost wages, foregone dinner, prevailed upon their relatives to help them get to and from the council meeting, or undergone other personal inconveniences in order to simply have an opportunity to voice their views, pro or con, or simply ask the question. This does not include the simple act of gathering the required courage to step out in front of a large gathering and no longer be faceless and nameless. The simple palliative, well, come back next meeting, does not quell the rage generated. Therefore, due to the intense emotional strain on our Hopkins residents, greatly increased workload required by the town clerk's office, planning department, planning board, plus due consideration of the information presented by the solar project developers seeking comprehensive plan and zone changes, I would like to make the following motion, and I will read it, but I understand this. Anyway, regarding the format and scheduling of proposed solar project hearings before the town council. I move that proposed solar project developer presentations seeking comprehensive plan and zone change approvals by the Hopkinton Town Council be limited to 1.5 hours and that resident response of abutters and others be limited to 1.5 hours. The solar project developer should present written information to the town clerk to be forwarded to the town councilors 2 weeks in advance of the scheduled public hearing date to allow ample time for the town councilors to review the information and prepare pertinent questions to be discussed during the public hearing. Residents can continue contacting the town council via email and phone calls prior to and after the hearing to share their views. This will allow each project to be covered in one town council meeting and voted on at the following town council meeting. To date, there are 6 projects beyond the Skunk Hill and Arcadia Road Visa Lane projects in the pipeline requesting comprehensive plan and zone changes. I believe passage of this motion will help to expedite these projects through the public hearing process, reduce the town's administrative workload, and reduce the emotional strain on our residents while allowing a fair process to all parties. Okay?
Yeah, we'll all take a shot at it. So, all right, so let me just reframe. I guess, so you want to do an hour and a half, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So who wants to start with? Let's kind of go with the first bullet point, which specifies the time of the chairman.
Right.
So do you have any comment? You want to start, Robert?
Yeah. So for the first bullet point,
There's a time limitation.
It's on the move.
It's on the...
it's not, sorry, it's on the thing. On the solar project. I think you make some very good points, and I do think that it would be helpful if we can rearrange our meetings slightly. I do think it's a problem that the citizens are heard last. So what I would think might work, because I don't believe it can be done in one meeting under any circumstance. I just don't think it can be, period. However, I see no reason why we couldn't begin the first hour of a hearing listening to citizens first. So people who have to go home, have babysitters, have someone taking care of children, have to be at third shift. If we could listen to citizens first for an hour, or maybe an hour and a half, depending on how long, and then do the developer for the next hour and a half. Then if it's continued, the same process, where the citizens could talk first, and then the developer. If there is room after the developer, the public will still speak after that, because there are people with lots to say. I think that we can still keep them, have public speak at 5 minutes apiece. But I think it's possible to have at least the first hour for people who need to say something but then leave. I still think it's going to take a lot longer than one meeting. There's just too much covered. And we get those huge binders way before the meeting. So what's in the binder, they're also presented. And they need to do it both verbally, orally, and they give it to us as well in written form. And then as we discuss and as we hear from people, we end up having questions to follow up on. And as we hear from the public, not just from the developers, we hear what we need to start questioning and looking into more deeply. And in that case, it still takes another meeting or two. So that's my comment.
Now, do you want to respond? Or wait till you go
Yeah,
around?
we'll all kind of...
Want to go around and then?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yes, Doctor.
You know, I think this whole thing is very interesting. Here I am, an official of the town of Hopkinton, the supreme law-making body of this town, and we work with various boards and commissions, town officials, staff, and I want to see that any developer that comes before this town, they respond to the planning board report before this council, and we haven't done that until I was there. And you know, it's like a kid going to their parents and they're flunking math, let's say, and they're passing everything else. They want to talk about all the stuff that's easy. I want a frank discussion. I want a discussion of the planning board report, good, bad, or neutral. and I expect people to address that directly. The planning board is a colleague of us in town government. They deal with a comprehensive plan. They know the issues, and we got to start extending respect to the planning board of this town. It's part of town government, and that should be part of this. Thank you.
Can you weigh in on the time limits that Sharon suggested?
I think that her time limit is fine, because otherwise, we have so many proposals, and if you have to shorten people's presentation in time, if more people want to speak, that's fine. But I'm going to tell you right now, I've been on this council since November of last year. You know pretty much the same arguments are basically the same. Every presentation, I can probably give both sides. I'm sure you could give both sides of the argument. So we're hearing the same information, and the time is the council's got to get its act together and consolidate some of this stuff and start listening to the public and our boards, as well as being better organized. And I commend, and I'm chairman of the Republicans in town, and Sharon is and also the Democrat. The thing is, this town needs to get its act together, and I salute you, Sharon, for the work that you've done on this. Thank you.
Sylvia,
Yeah,
time restraints?
time restraints. I wouldn't want to pigeonhole us in telling a project. You have an hour and a half. We have solar projects that are large, and we've had projects that were extremely small. We've had presentations that went on for hours, and we've had those for 15 or 20 minutes. And it includes not just the solar, but any hearing. And there's some hearings that are just so darn, they're easy and they're very simple. So anyway, even with the solar ones, people need to hear about the proposal. So having them speak first doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't make sense. People need to hear what the proposal is about. After that, you work your way through it. One thing I will point out, on January 22nd, we amended the solar ordinance. So the proposals that have come in, I say proposal or proposals, because I know there's one, that have come in after that, and they're new, and they have to do with solar, they're going nowhere, absolutely nowhere. We're almost done. The last one is the Skunk Hill, large. And we got a small one in my neighborhood, it's 30 acres, the whole parcel is about 30 acres. And then there are these little things isolated. So there's no more big solar proposals that we have to deal with. So this is coming to an end because we amended the ordinance. Anyone out there that wants a zone change, all they're going to get is 3 acres. If you've got 400 acres, or 600, or 1,000, or whatever that number is, the most you can do is 3% of 3 acres, you can't go over 3 acres. So anything that comes in, waste of time, 30 years.
But we still have to get through these things.
We still have to get through these little.
And that's what I was
And they are little. They are little, and there's this last one that's big, and we're not,
Well, and obviously, I think an hour and a half is sufficient. I agree with Scott that number one, we have heard all of the developers say the same thing. So I don't know how many questions you have to ask, but they're saying exactly the same thing. And the residents are either for it or against it. And I think 5 minutes per person, the abutters first, that's 18 people that can go through. I don't think we have had 18 people in one night, I don't think so. So I think, well, maybe, but I think, I think that we would get the point. And they can send emails to us, so if they didn't get a chance to speak, they can send their emails. I print every email, I read every email, so I know what the people are saying and what they think, pro and against.
The senior citizens have email.
So I just think that this would be a way to reduce the stress on all sides, really.
And
So Scott, let me weigh in, because I haven't had a chance to read it. No, obviously, I'm all for making things quicker. I have 2 full-time jobs, so In concept, it sounds like it would be great, but I don't think it's practical. As Sylvia mentioned, I think some of the complexities of some of these projects, although we get information ahead of time, a lot of the public don't get the packets that we get.
But what have they really said different
Oh,
in
no,
each
right.
one? They're
No,
all the
to your
same.
point, I understand. Right,
They
so,
have not come up with any new ways to do it.
right, no, to your
So
point, no, you're correct.
it's very, very much X number of acres of solar.
Sometimes it's underground utilities versus, there's a variation, so.
That's true, but that's very minor.
So,
Very minor.
right, but I just think it'd be difficult to hold them to just on that. But, to your point, we can certainly try some variation of this. I think, we mentioned about residents speaking, if folks have babysitter situations or work at a second shift and want to speak first, that sounds like a good idea, have them speak first. But again, they haven't been presented with the material.
That's right.
So, as Sylvia mentioned, it might be, unless they just want to voice their opinion, that's fine.
Sometimes they don't care about it.
Yeah,
They
but,
don't care about their hearing.
but,
Answers no, no matter what you hear.
but that's something that if folks need to go, I'm all for getting them out if they need to get out and don't want to wait until the presentation's concluded. That makes sense.
I'd like to thank Sharon again. I think the issue is very simple. You set the time limit, as Councilor David said, and if you really need extra time, you need another half hour, 15 minutes, whatever it is, you can have a motion to extend it. But I think, and I congratulate, thank Councilor Davis for taking the bull by the horns and in doing this. And the council always has the option to extend the meeting 15 minutes, a half hour, whatever they deem in the interest of the town of Hopkinton. But I salute you and I support your efforts on that.
So we can certainly try. I think, with the next solar project that comes our way, we can't do it midstream, right? But we can certainly try with the next new one and see how it goes. That's all I can say.
The next new one, we might just at the meeting, just vote right away before we even hear the project.
No.
Well, it doesn't adhere to the January 22nd amendment for what they're going to propose. They've got hundreds of acres, and they want to use it for solar in a residential. They're asking for a zone change. They don't get one.
Which one?
The one that we have set up for hearing right here. It's number 3.
It's just hard to set limitations. We can certainly try. I think I understand where you're coming from, and I think we can try.
Can we, if it needs to be continued, then can we limit the developer to an hour and a half? Wait, and limit the public to an hour and a half, and then make that decision whether there needs to really be more information given by the developer. I doubt it. I doubt that there's...
Well, each meeting is typically 3 hours anyway, so.
Right, but I don't want to continue it and continue it. I want it done.
Normally, when it's continued, it's because someone has questions and or whatever. Right?
No, it's usually continued because the developer's taken 3 hours or 2 hours and 50 minutes and we never got a chance.
Yeah, no, right, that's happened too.
That's most of the
Right.
time.
So we can try and split it up as best, right? I think that's certainly we try and solve that. But again, I don't, like Sylvia mentioned, I don't want to pigeonhole us into 1 hour and a half and then, get caught with, geez, we have extra things here we need to discuss.
It wasn't just the developers. I mean, we just had the lawyer at the last one that I wasn't at, but it was a continuance of the lawyers for the people. So that continues.
Because he didn't have time to even do, he didn't have time to do it in the first.
No, he didn't, but he
ran out of time.
But he did 40 minutes of the second one. And
Well, I think
30 minutes of the
we've heard
first
all
one.
of those arguments by now too.
Exactly, but I mean.
So I think, we
the public
could
has
do
the
it
issue
all
too.
in an hour and a half.
I
on
understand,
both
but
sides.
the public has the same issue that the council would have. I don't think so.
Yeah, so, but
And it's
so
better.
If you want to-
there's no public comment, it's just a council discussion.
So Frank, do the best you can.
I'll do the best I can. I understand what your concerns are, and I'll certainly try and make it an hour and a half, and we'll see how we go.
Frank, since we're on topic, can I just say something to this?
It's really,
I'm
Can you
not,
put up to the microphone so they can hear you at home? You didn't even allow it, I'm sorry.
yeah, like I said, it's a council discussion.
I think the issue is, when I go to a meeting and I sit there for 3 hours, maybe we need to let the developers know that there's certain criteria that, I mean, I'm kind of appalled as a resident and a taxpayer here that I'm listening to a developer tell you folks what your job is and the power that you have and what our school budget is, and you have to consider that. None of those things have anything to do with the proposals that they're presenting. Just like you say to me, Frank, stay on topic. These developers are not staying on topic.
Right.
They're going off and they're talking about all these other things, trying to coerce you, trying to say what our school budget is, and you're going to have to deal with that. That doesn't have anything to do with these proposals that they're putting forth. And so if you don't want to put a time restraint on them, they should at least have, that they have to stick to the topic, present their proposal, and not get into what our budget is and all these other things that is painstaking for us to sit and listen to. Like, let's get the proposal out there. But they need certain criteria, and they need to stay on topic and not go off on this other stuff,
That's fine.
instead of a time restraint.
This, guys, is not a, it can be really brief, it's not a public hearing, it's for council discussion, so if you want to be real brief, Eric, please.
I will.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So I just want to say, I see what Sharon's trying to do. But I also want to just bring a couple of things to your attention. I'm going to send you a letter, because I have a lot of things to say about this, and I'm not going to take your time. But I have been to many dozens of public hearings, and some of them have been very formal, like Connecticut Siding Council and even, Connecticut state government. And the point about this that I want to make is, I had 3 topics that I wanted to comment on tonight. And every time I walk to the microphone, the clock is ticking, and I have to think about whether I can even talk about the things I want to talk about. There's a reason they call them hearings, and there's a reason why the time limit can't necessarily be rigid. And just to speak to this particular single issue, like, I really can't think of anything worse than this proposal from the standpoint of a resident and a butter. But just to give you one example, like, I really do work hard before these hearings and do my homework and try to learn about the individual proposals and everything there is to know about. I think you guys know that because I've commented on a wide variety of things. And I go to a public hearing and I listen to the developer talk for 2 hours and I take notes. And what I really want to do, there are some things that are said that I think maybe are just not true. When I stand up, I'm just another guy who gets 5 minutes, and I'm not in a position to make any kind of sustained critique. So I want to comment on that proposal, and I want to rebut things that the developer said. And one time I wanted to give you exhibits, and he said you can dump your exhibits, but you can't tell us what they are. So if you're going to make a public hearing, follow that format, where I've taken the trouble to give you evidence in the hearing that I think you should consider in your deliberations, and you say, you got 5 minutes, and sorry, that's all you got. The alternative to hire an attorney to represent you is not satisfactory either. Nobody knows better than I do. That's expensive, and he's only a competent witness on legal issues. And we just want to participate in our democratic government and provide you with information in your deliberations to make these decisions and give it to you from our point of view. And it's not because we're blowhards and we just want to go on and on and on. Many times I don't want to give you a soundbite.
But you can give it to me in an email. You can give me all the information from your view.
That's not, with all due respect, in a public hearing, the point is for others to be able to understand the issue better as well. And if I go out for coffee with you and give you my concerns, then other people, it is an education process for all of us. So I learned quite a bit at the Woodville-Alton hearings, that helped me in a future hearing. So that doesn't work either, okay?
So Eric, can you just recap for me? Are you in favor of the hour and a half, or you just...
I'm completely opposed. I mean, there have been many good points raised. Sylvia raised the point that one of these might be 10 acres of solar panels, and one of them might be 122. The environmental impacts depending on the circumstances, might be different from one to another. I mean, I could go down the list, but the main thing is, and let me just say this one more point, because I have been to many, many, many of these things, more than I want to, and a lot of them involve wind turbines, okay? The developer spends a couple of years, like on these wind turbine projects on Cape Cod I was involved in, there were 5 years in the gestation period. And they spent 5 years, and they came with a plan, and they're in a profit-seeking project, and he's got his engineer, and he's got his environmental specialist, and he's got his legal counsel that did all 10 of his projects, and on and on and on and on. The abutters get a legal notice in the mail. They don't understand it. They don't know what to make of it. They don't really know what to do, and they don't know what any of their neighbors are thinking, and they also don't have the wherewithal to get up a learning curve in 2 weeks before the hearing. So part of this process is sort of iterative, and from the standpoint of a resident, and whether you're an abutter or not, it's almost impossible to cope with it. You know, to just try to get there, get on time, and know enough to know, just to even, we don't get the binders. You guys get a binder. We go in mystified, and, and then when the developer presents, many times people are saying, oh, I didn't know it was going to be like that. You know what I mean? And then we're trying to react. So if we only had one meeting, like something would come up, and then I would never be able to go learn about it and come back.
But in reality, aren't all these projects about the same?
No, you know what the problem is? Listen, we have a fundamental difference here. I don't want to take you down the road, but we have a difference. We have a very different opinion about how these things should be conducted. We think that you are frankly way off base, acting in the position as if you were evaluating the master plan. We don't think that you should be talking about drainage and fences and landscaping and how many trees and everything else, because it's our view that that should have been accomplished. So if in fact you embrace, I'm not saying you will, but if you were looking at it from our perspective, it shouldn't take 3 hours to determine whether or not you agree with the planning board as to the consistency with the comprehensive plan, if you agreed with us that this other phase should have already happened before it reached your desk. So Sharon, if you were doing it the way we think the law requires you to do it, and I know there's a difference, then I think your meetings would be an hour or less. And I don't think the developer, he would start to present the details. Actually, I went to a planning board meeting where the planning board told him, as far as the advisory opinion goes on the comp plan, we don't care, stop. They told the engineer, I don't want to know. They literally told him, I don't want to know, please stop. You know, we just want to evaluate this in terms of the comprehensive plan for the advisory opinion, because that's their comprehensive plan advisory opinion act. And what they wanted that guy to do was, if they were sitting in their other capacity, looking at the master plan, performing their function to make sure it met all the regulations, yeah, they want to know all that and more, and then they maybe want to hire an engineer. So there's been a lot of hostility between us, but we really believe it would be healthier for the town if you took a look at our contention that it should go through the planning board for the advisory opinion, and they should have to go all the way through the first phase of the approval process, which in this case would be the master plan, before they can even come to you. Then you wouldn't waste all these resources, and you wouldn't be trying to do a function that frankly you're not competent to perform, because the planning board has much more experience with that. I don't mean that you personally are incompetent. I just mean
it's a fundamental difference, obviously.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please, less than 20 words. Again, this is just...
I agree with Sharon not to a point. The hour and a half, I don't email them. I'm kind of rare, I guess. I don't have a computer, but I don't think I'm the only one. I can't email.
Okay, thank you.
Still have 4 words left.
things so far as reviewing proposals. It's a great tradition here in Hopkinton. I mean, people remember Nathan Kay. I mean, people used to go, oh my God, it's Nathan. And then they'd sit on the edge of their chairs and listen to everything he said. I've seen airline pilots dragged out of here kicking and screaming. And I've seen meetings go on until the wee hours of the morning almost. This is not something new. Everyone in town that feels as you feel, Sharon, that this is inconvenient, they can call their counselor and say, I want you to say this for me, or I want you to say that for me. But I believe that the personal engagement that people have when they give their opinions is like an EKG and listening to a heartbeat. If you've ever seen a mother who's pregnant listening to the heartbeat of her baby for the first time, it's wondrous. It's wonderful. How would it be if the physician said to her, oh, you know, this is the heartbeat right here on paper. I'm the heartbeat of Hopkinton. I'm part of it. I'm Dorothy. I don't need you to speak for me all the time. I want to be able to get up and speak for myself.
And now you allow that, an hour and a half.
And an hour and a half, we can have maybe 15 people. I mean, I've seen like 75 line up. And you know, being as it may, that's too bad. This is America. I believe I have the right to speak, and I believe that the developers have a right to present their whole project. I want to know what the blazes is going on. And when somebody comes to me and says, oh, you know, I'm anti-solar because you know what they're going to use? They're going to use Agent Orange. I want to be able to say to them, are you all right or what? They're not going to use Agent Orange to keep the weeds down. They got right up there and said they are going to hand trim. So unless we hear the whole presentation, we're not going to know these things. We're not going to be able to defend our stance. And Scottville, so far as the planning board goes, they sit at the pleasure of the town council. The town council is elected. The planning board is appointed. They are there to give their opinion and their advice. It is not a law. It is not a rule. And as I said before, they look at the project like this. The town council has a greater responsibility to take that advice and to take that project and to say, how does it affect everyone in the town? So it's not, you know, it's not the end when someone's advice is not accepted. And I'm sure not everyone has accepted everyone's advice all their life, regardless of their position. So keep it the way it is. Let's keep Hopkinton, Hopkinton. Keep it up.
Scott, I'm just going to respond to the fact that I know that it was between the planning board and the town council, and I've been interested in the government of Wisconsin since I was a child. I'm a 65-year-old man, but the fact of the matter is, if you want to recruit volunteers, you're dealing with people who have a function to deal with planning and development issues as the planning board does. And they give you unanimous recommendations. If you routinely ignore them, even if they look at it just from that perspective and they're referencing the comprehensive plan and those decisions, then you should take it with very serious consideration. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
All right, so number two, Sharon.
Number two, town engineer involved, yes. Although solar projects that are being placed in commercial zoned areas and solar projects that are being built as part of the Farmers Liability Ordinance do not come before the town council for approval, I think that it is still the responsibility of the town council to at least recommend that a town engineer be hired as an independent contractor reporting to Jim Lanphier of the planning department to work with the developers of these solar projects to ensure that appropriate buffers are maintained when trees are being cut down. I have long advocated for this and desire that this topic be placed.
Can I speak first?
Yeah.
I want you to know that I've already talked to the manager before I saw your letter and pointed out that with those projects, the council has approved the 91, Route 91 and also the Main Street at Exit 1. And we specifically said one of the conditions were, and the developer offered, we are able to send our engineer once a month to review. And also, there was a document that we signed that the town can go in at any time if a complaint is made. So, but we want that, and we want this engineer to go every month to make sure that they're adhering to all the
Yeah,
conditions.
but I'm talking
And
about.
we don't even have to pay for it.
Right, I know,
Right.
I thought that.
So we want that to be done, and I agree with you.
But I think it should definitely be done when the developer is scheduling tree cutting.
Yes,
That's my
yes,
point.
yeah, everything for the
You know,
entire
I have
project.
medical engineering for that.
Yes, I didn't know, when I made this was in response to what happened at Palmer. I mean, you know, we weren't even involved in, and I wasn't even sure that at what happened at Palmer Circle, was there supposed to be some kind of communication between our engineer, whatever, and the guy that was going to cut down the trees. I don't know that was ever specifically said, you know, call me before you get ready to cut. So that's my point. That's my point. We ought to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's also sometimes difficult because Palmer Circle in particular was commercial by right. So they can come in and do things they weren't given the same parameters as solar had. So I think that that's something that the planning board can do rather than the council, and they do it at planning board. When they give them permission, they say this is what you will do when you're cutting down the trees. It is not up to council, it is directly in the planning board's hands.
I understand, but I still think that if we're representing the residents, we ought at least give our advice to the planning board or suggestions to the planning board, that they at least have a representative that's representing the town, be there when they're cutting, period. I don't care what kind, whether it's commercial or whatever. I think.
Yeah, Barbara's right, she mentions, not all of them had council conditions. So the engineer would be paid for by the applicant. In these other instances with farm variability or by right, we have to depend on our building and zoning office.
And also our planning board, still goes
Well,
for
of course,
planning.
of course.
And planning needs to say you cannot do this without a buffer.
Right.
On farm viability, let alone anything else. And it didn't even come in front of us.
Right.
The plan is
Anyway,
aware
I'm
of what happened. The
responding.
planner, Jim, is aware of what happened. on Palmer
He'll
Circle.
fix it.
Yeah, but now it's too late.
No, right, for this particular, right, but going forward.
Going forward. We all learn in the process.
Okay.
Next 7 is the residents open to
Right. I applaud the residents who came to the Hopkinton Town Council meeting on Monday, April 22nd, to make their opinions known regarding the Skunk Hill and Arcadia Road solar projects. I encourage all of the residents affected by the other solar projects that the Town Council has to review to also share their opinions. Your opinions count. The town of Hopkinton is between a rock and a hard place. As a result, placing potential solar plants in residential areas in an effort to generate future revenue are being considered despite their disruptive consequences on the community. As one of the residents said at that Monday meeting, the real problem is the lack of economic development in Hopkinton. I agree with his statement, and I would like to propose having a residents' open forum to discuss, brainstorm possible ways that we can solve this problem other than by changing zoning for solar plants. Examples of some of the ideas that have been suggested to me or that I have thought of are: forward a list of our available commercial properties to the Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce to be entered into its database. New companies moving into the area often first contact the chamber for potential places to locate their businesses. They do this to save time and to obtain comparative information for decision making. Number 2, contact the Rhode Island Economic Development Office regarding current business opportunities in the state pipeline. Lobby for having some of these new businesses locate in Hopkinton with our excellent school systems and reasonably priced homes. Number 3, research several economic development companies to determine the kinds of projects other than solar that are being undertaken today in Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Determine if similar projects would be successful in Hopkinton. And number 4, there are a number of buildings and other properties in town that can become hosts of businesses compatible with town goals if only our citizens and developers can learn that they exist. I'm sure that there are many other ideas and suggestions in our community. The point is to become proactive. Instead of waiting for a business to discover Hopkinton, we should be actively marketing our town. We are all Hopkinton residents, and we should work together to solve our economic problems. Therefore, I am requesting that the Town Council schedule an economic development brainstorming open forum. So that's what I would like to see happen.
And make it a chance for that workshop I suggested on these good projects.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. Yes, Mother.
I have 2 things. One is most of our commercial properties are managed by their owners, and their owners have them at Ocean State, Charlotte, and at the Rhode Island Economic Development.
Ocean State Community.
Ocean State, right.
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce. I was on the Economic Development Commission before I was on council, and we had one which is defunct for the moment, but we could reopen and discuss if anyone is interested in being on an Economic Development Commission. We have one by charter. We can certainly open that. But a lot of the owners of commercial property now, most of the commercial properties have businesses in them. There are not open spaces waiting for someone to come in. And most of your commercial owners already know who they have to see if they're trying to sell the property. Like a resident would go to a real estate agent. A commercial person does the same thing. They go to commercial real estate, they make sure that their their property is out there. But most of our commercial is full up. We do not have that much commercial space in this town. And the big properties that are open now, and one of the ones that has been just sold, the 250 acres, that's going to be a very big commercial property. And we will get a lot of feedback, and not all of it will be fun and games. So I think we could open an Economic Development Commission. I think that would be nice to bring that one forward too, as well as what Frank has just suggested.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next action. Next, number 3, under new business, discuss and consider setting a hearing date regarding zoning ordinance amendment and comprehensive plan flume amendment petition filed by Edward Carapezza and Solar DG LLC Clearway Energy Group, the property located at 336 Woodville Road, identified as Assessor's Plat 18, Lot 36, an R480 zone for proposed installation of photovoltaic solar array. Lisa.
Mr. Lampier was contacted by the people representing Mr. Carl Pezza, and there were a couple of dates that they wanted to let us know that they would not be available for, and it would be June 24th or July 1. Because you have others in the pipeline, and you have a special meeting on June 10th at 6:30 to render a decision on one, and then at 7 p.m. to begin the hearing on another process. Application. You may want to start thinking about farther into July. And I imagine you'll want to have it at Charter Middle School if you can get that school. Your regular meeting dates that month are July 1, July 15th. So if you wanted to head out farther, 7/22.
For Monday?
July 22nd?
Yeah.
And I believe we can get the middle school. I was in contact with the scheduling person last week, and once June is over with, there'll be less conflicts, and Monday evenings were available.
That'd be 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
All right, thank you. Number 4, discuss and consider setting a hearing date for zoning ordinance text amendment filed by Norbert Yancey Jr. for property located at 999 Main Street, identified as Assessor's Plat 27 Lot 102, a neighborhood business zone to add proposed use category for art gallery studio.
Maybe, or we do it the same night, July 22nd.
Can we do it even earlier?
Well,
I mean, during a normal council meeting?
probably,
Yeah,
actually, yeah.
Why don't we do that earlier?
What would you do 7:15?
Well, I think they did make a date for that.
Put it on a regular council meeting.
You could absolutely do it because it has to be advertised 3 times and the display ad and about a notice has to come in. So the earliest potential date you could do it would be June 17th.
It's okay.
Steven said it would be happy, we'd be happy to attend the 17th. I believe it is on for an advisory opinion on June 5th with your planning board.
Okay, so we have time.
So June 17th,
Council meeting.
Yeah, it's a regular meeting.
You want to do that?
Yeah, let's, want to try that?
Yeah.
6:17?
17th, yes, it's a normal meeting.
6:17.
Mr. Adolfi, we do, our council, and we do have some waivers, just to make sure that the board includes that those waivers are granted as part of our application for our hearing.
It'll be a discussion then.
Yeah, that's fine, Steve. Okay, that sounds good. And then next, number 5, discuss, consider, and vote to authorize $100 tea sponsor donation from the town council contingency line item number 5065-001 to sponsor a tea to support and contribute towards the June 8th, 2019 Hopkinton PD IBPO Local 498 second annual golf tournament fundraiser.
Before Scott begins to do a big speech on this, because I know what he's going to say, is, and I talked to Frank about it, that I don't think we should, it was a mistake last time, but I don't think we should be using town funds for that, but I would be very happy to donate toward this effort to individually from myself, not from the town. So
I play in the tournament, so it's expensive for me. It's a lot more than $20.
Yeah, that. I'll give you more.
So what do you guys think?
Mr. President, since I've been undercover colleague, but I've already written a check out with $10.
All right.
The last of the big time spenders.
Good for you.
Got to remember I'm pot Scottish and I'm a Republican, so we expect. But anyway, I'll make a motion that we decline to donate $100 to the tea sponsor and risk the IBPO success on that tournament.
Second.
I have to say, I actually agree with them, but my husband plays golf and he'll definitely be there. And he's already put the $400 in for the unit. That's 4 people. It's $100 a person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so anyway, he's already sent his check and he's excited, so maybe I should recuse.
I agree with you. I don't think this is the time.
Yeah, I agree.
So we have a motion made, right? Did someone second it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm playing. I would support it, but obviously, it's only $100, but I'll play in it. I'm going to be donating $200 because my son and I are playing.
And who do we make the check out to?
IBPO.
IBPO.
No, the IBPO local. So,
But send it to you because it's part of your, we're helping you to play to help them.
Well, no, I'm going to contribute my own money, so this will just, if you want to contribute,
Oh, I can give it to you.
yeah, just give it to me, I'll give it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, okay, so motion made and second, any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
I am opposed to that, because
I did, I put it with the majority.
Okay, thank you. Last public forum. Okay.
I just wanted to, Carol Rogers, Pleasant Drive, I just wanted to mention that I thought the new PSES ordinance actually says that there will be a town engineer or designee shall inspect at the expense of the applicant weekly during the construction and annually after, and that applies to the commercial also, because that is the PSES.
That's true, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
And
I'm hoping that we can all work together and make good things happen with that 245 acres. I was looking at the property, and one thing that I found odd was that in 2016, they paid $72,298 in property tax, and then it dropped in 2017 to $20,568. So we have lost about $52,000 in tax revenue on that property since 2017, and I don't see a reason why, because
They could change over to,
Farm forest.
farm forest and open space.
But I don't think it did. I didn't see that in the property cards. So,
It's commercially zoned.
right, so what would have justified a loss of 52,000?
I just talked about the hotels and stuff, so it's. Okay, anyone else? Yes.
I know you've heard a lot from me, Frank, and council, my other comments were specific to agenda items. I just was struck by Justin's comments when we were talking about the ordinance for the height of grass. It's really an aesthetic issue, and it's an issue about whether or not it drives down somebody's property value to be located next to an abandoned home or lot. And I just wanted to remind everybody that, in these hearings, and you've seen the photos or driven past sites like the one on Alton Bradford Road for the solar installation, there are 40-foot power poles with high transmission lines. There's a 6-foot cyclone fence around every project with danger signs posted. And in the most recent project, the panacea, to make it all palatable, was that the abutters should all be thrilled to learn there will be a 12-foot dirt wall that they can look at. So I just hope that you'll keep in perspective that on the one hand, we are sort of saying that it's okay to rezone right next to these folks' homes and have them looking at a 12-foot dirt wall. That's no problem, but any grass over 15 inches is kind of a problem. And I wanted to give you a metric too. I was really struck by this. I had never noticed this really before. I'm not sure why until a couple of weeks ago. If Councilor Capaldo just said we don't have much commercial space in town. I think we said that, but he said that many times. If you look at the comp plan that you all approved February of 2018, there's a table on page 102, and it shows the number of acres in every classification and zoning classification. And that table, as of year-end 2017, listed 72 acres of commercial space. And the reason I want to put this in perspective is, a single project like Maxon Hill was twice as big as 72 acres. It was 139 acres. So that actually tripled the amount of commercial space in town. Brushy Brook Wood was 5 times that amount, 5 times the existing 72 acres. Skunk Hill is 240%, so that's like 3.5 times. The table would be 3.5 times what it was. And well, Bradford was 140, it was 100 and some acres. So my point is this though, we are looking at these projects one at a time, and they've typically been designated commercial special, and we're looking at each one as if it's sort of a one-off, right? But I wrote recently a piece in the Westerly Sun where I totaled up the acreage and some of the other metrics, and these are hard numbers, right, that I think are worth thinking about. I took the 7 largest projects, including some that had been voted down, but some people in this room voted for all of them, and there's a couple more that are proposed that people indicated they would be for. The total acreage of just those 7 of the largest projects was 1,100 acres. That's 1,100 acres that was going to become commercial. That's 15 times the commercial acreage in the comp plan, where the ink wasn't even dry when we went down this path. And the reason I want you to think about that is because I want you to ask yourselves the question, do you really think that your constituents gave you a mandate to remake the comprehensive plan to such a radical degree that without telling them what your plan was and what you intended to do in the aggregate, that you could increase the commercial space overnight by 15 times what it was. And again, there are people here who have either voted for or indicated they would vote for every one of those. So that, to me, more than anything, any one of the thousands of words that's been said over and over again at all these hearings, really crystallizes where this wave of protest is coming from and why there's such a giant divide between the planning board that keeps sending you advisory opinions saying not consistent, not consistent, not consistent. But let's stand back and look at that aggregate number. And that's the question I really want you to ask. Do we really have a mandate to do this without ever going in front of people and explaining our full intention? And then if I could just comment on one other comment, and this is really emotional for me. You know, I have a residence in Connecticut. It's 45 minutes from Sandy Hook. My wife is a trauma therapist, very specialist form of therapist. The principal of that school lived in Weston, Connecticut, where I'm from. I don't want to say too much, but one of my wife's clients, I should back up. So my wife was instrumental in organizing resources, people who have special training in trauma therapy, to bring them to bear to help heal this community. One of her clients, you know I've been very active in EMS, and I don't know whether any of you have ever been in the fire department or EMS. One of the things that you do when you manage a scene that we respond to, was say there's a car accident. We have this in our town. If a car goes into the woods at night and somebody goes in there and the occupant has been beheaded, you don't let anyone else go in. There's no reason to expose everybody else to that scene. One of my wife's clients was the sergeant in charge of the scene at Sandy Hook. He personally carried out all the bodies of the children so that no one else would have to deal with that. That was a lot of years ago, and he's still going through that. And some of these other people that are being seen by this other group of therapists, they include siblings, they include parents, they include 5-year-old kids who lost their best friend, who survived the incident and trying to cope with that. And so I do have an issue with the recent action to make us a Second Amendment sanctuary city. I know that President Landolfi did an interview, which I listened to, with Dan York, who's a conservative radio host. And I thought Mr. York brought up some important points, and one of them was, how did you know that your constituents wanted that? And how did you determine that? And did you think about the fact that branding your town in this manner might not be what everybody in your town wants, or that some people might really object? So I'm not trying to wade into a discussion about the Second Amendment, but here's why I object. It didn't accomplish anything. It's one of the most divisive issues across the country. It was gratuitous, and this is the classic wedge issue. And there was just no reason whatsoever to put a sign outside of Hopkinton that said assault weapons welcome here. We don't even have any jurisdiction over that. So as far as what we've been through this past year, dividing our community already, there was no reason to pile this one on the heap. I just don't understand it. I don't know why, in the midst of all this, you would want to divide your community that way. And there are people like me, like my wife, and many, many others. This isn't about who's right or who's wrong. There was no reason to do that to us, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with further comment? Make it quick, Steve, if you could, please, sir.
Try. I wasn't even going to say anything, but Steve Wheel, 11 Old Depot Road. I wasn't going to even say anything tonight because sometimes I get a little tired. But with Eric making his comments, I feel like I spent today just with some notes about this exact issue. And I sat here during that meeting, and clearly I found it sort of offensive. I really did. And you know, whether you have a gun or not, I have a gun. This isn't about that. But that's what's nice usually about local town politics, I found, since I've started to become more active, is that most of us can engage and leave national politics aside, leave things that divide us tremendously aside, and we can focus on local issues, right or wrong, however we feel. We can kind of focus and have a commonality in that. But that wasn't the case with this issue. And I here's why. I mean, I think, you know, Mr. Hurst, I agree with you on almost everything you say. I think you're a good man. But I disagree with you here. You went on to talk about liberals and progressives getting the gun control issue wrong in this state or country. I'm a proud liberal. I think I find myself to be okay saying that in this day and age. I haven't always been. But I don't need to apologize for being wrong on anything regarding this issue. No one has ever taken a gun away in this town. Is there anyone in the town of Hopkinton who's had a police officer charge into their home and seek confiscation of a hunting, sporting, an AR-15 submachine gun or assault weapon? I dare not say it ever happened, because it hasn't. But that's what you hear, and these issues become so inflammatory. That's the worry. And people on that side of things have been saying this for decades. I listened to Ms. Thompson talk about the subject of shooting critters on her family farm and how important it was to have the rifle to do that. I gather that no one ever charged into Ms. Thompson's house or farm and took away her rifle for that purpose. And what I'm really upset about is every time a school shooting occurs or a mass murder, our politicians do exactly nothing. They don't do a thing to try and keep their citizens safe. I guess that's why you want to prevent here in Hopkinton with this amendment issue, or sanctuary city for a Second Amendment. I mean, are we trying to stop legislators from discussing things that might prevent such atrocities like bump stocks, which turn semi-automatic assault weapons into fully automatic weapons? Are we trying to stop magazine capacities that can hold 100 high-velocity rounds at a time that might negate a shooter from having to reload a regular firearm when they're out killing people? If state or federal government officials would ever get off their tails and enact common sense legislation, is the law you're trying to tell your police officers to use sound discretion on? Is that the kind of thing you're trying to tell them to use sound discretion on and not enforce? That's offensive to me. And I agree with Ms. Capalvo that, and she's 100% correct, it's unenforceable, and you shouldn't always want to follow the law when it's convenient, and you shouldn't do it with gun rights either. What I think you should have done, if you really wanted to do this, is to put it on a referendum for the town to vote on, and have citizens throughout our community, and not a gun club, sanction or not sanction the identification with this issue. It's not a statistically sound way of finding out what your constituency wants. It just isn't. 8,000 people in a town, 400 in your club, every single one of them agree with you. That's 5% of the population of Hopkinton. I want to go on record, I'm not for being a sanctuary city for anything illegal, including immigration or this. I own a handgun for protection and have for many, many years. But I've also never believed in unlimited gun ownership or unlimited gun rights. And we need brave representatives willing to take stands, sometimes unpopular ones with a very passionate belief system. Because what happened here at the last meeting was a true slow pitch to an audience that just wanted to meet. And you guys hit the softballs out of the park with it. It was just too easy for you. And that's all I have to say, but thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We just had a shoot, almost shoot. I believe it was a coach, tackled a guy, stopped it. It was on the radio, on the news. And we had a hero that got killed trying to stop a shoot. Now, if we had an armed, qualified, licensed person in the school, a lot of these shootings could have been cut way down or avoided.
Thank you, both. Okay. Well set, folks, for public forum. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you.